Oh yes, this is the Hardcore Marketing Show. I'm Casey Cheshire, your host for this epic journey. And today's show, sponsored by Cheshire Impact, on a mission to help people maximize their use of Pardot and Salesforce. CheshireImpact.com. Bam. And we're live. So I am excited. This is one of the first episodes of our Marketing Leader series. And my guest today is so cool, marketing strategist. And he has experience with both the B2B and the B2C world, which is, we're going to talk about that today. Also has experience with high-end prospects, those hard-to-reach prospects who maybe don't act the same way that everyone else does. Also Pardot certified. We're going to get into the marketing automation and some of his secrets. Also loves collecting vinyl, which we will talk about as well. Vice President of Digital Marketing at Dynasty Financial Partners, Justin Barish. How are you, sir?
I'm good, Casey. I'm good. Thanks for having me. I'm ready to go. Like you said, I got my coffee and my water here,
Yes,
ready to.
Me too. Me too. I got water, coffee. I'm just all hydrated over here, ready to go.
Nice. Yeah. If it was a little bit later in the day, I'd have my beer next to me too. But we'll keep it to coffee today.
Yeah, that'd be a different kind of podcast.
A different kind of podcast.
That's the late night show.
Ooh.
So the theme is around marketing leadership and learning from you on the strategy side, some of the challenges you've overcome. So what I want to do here is, this is heavy, but here, this is Thor's hammer. So take this hammer here and smash for me some bogus marketing strategy, something that maybe everyone's thinking is the case, and it just is not true. Just set the record straight once and for all.
Yeah, absolutely. So a big what I'll take my hammer and smash today. So I mean, just a little bit of context, so you know what exactly I'm smashing. I mean, at Dynasty Financial Partners, our prospects, our clients are all ultra high net worth financial advisors, and their clients are some of the wealthiest people in the country, right? So one of the myth that I'd like to smash today is that, you know, social marketing and really digital marketing in general, you know, beyond just social, beyond just marketing automation, doesn't work for the high net worth and even more specifically the ultra high net worth. I mean, to be frank, you know, I when I joined Dynasty, I'd never worked in financial services before, so this was something that I was looking to smash, but I wasn't certain about it by any way. In any way, shape, or form, right? Sort of my motivation. One of the big things that I wanted to do when I sort of took my seat here 4 years ago is figure out, is this a myth or is it true, right? Is what everybody tells me, is what all these advisors, says true? And
what were they saying? They were saying you have to word of mouth everybody.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So, I mean, one of the first questions I would ask is, I came from world of marketing, server virtualization, a world of marketing fashion, right? A world of marketing, technology. So that was one of the first questions I would ask is how do you guys get business as financial advisors? How do you find, somebody who's worth $10 million in liquid assets to invest with you? And 99 out of 100 times it's word of mouth referrals, word of mouth referrals. And that's true, right? I'm not, that is what it is when that is how the advisors get business. But what's not true, and what's totally a myth is that digital marketing can't also, be another channel that brings in those leads. And the reason, and none of these advisors had ever tested it, or tried it before. So to be frank, their perspective was one-sided. It was limited. How can you say that something works or doesn't work until you've tested it?
Yeah.
And we've tested it, right? That's where we're at now. And I can say that it's completely untrue. I mean, we've seen $10 million, people with over $10 million come in from a LinkedIn post, be nurtured through Pardot marketing automation, be sort of tracked and logged all through the Salesforce experience. And of course, at the end of the day, it's a relationship business and they are closed with that meeting or with that call with the advisor. But that couldn't have happened, without digital marketing sourcing and nurturing that lead.
Wow. And was it actually that $10 million millionaire that came in, or was it like their staff or something? Or
No. I mean, we see it happen. We see it happen all the time, right? And I
Wow.
mean, I can kind of lay it out in two different ways. We see it happen organically,
Yep.
and we see it happen inorganically, right? So I'll
Hmm.
kind of give you a quick example of both, right?
Yeah.
So on the organic side, the way that I really smash this myth is by saying, so hey, Mr. High Net Worth Advisor, you just told me your business development strategy is referrals. Well, what do referrals rely on? Oh,
Right.
well, a network, right?
Yeah.
You're not going to get a referral unless there's a network. And I don't mean a social network. I mean an in-person human network. The people who are currently your clients or your prospects, pretty damn good chance that people they know would also be good clients and prospects, right? So what we do is, and what's really interesting about our business is most of the clients we've worked with come from, big banks, Merrill Lynch, Morgan Stanley, Goldman Sachs, and a lot of those
Right.
institutions have super duper strict rules about what an advisor is and isn't allowed to do. And using social media in a big bank environment is typically a no-no. So it's something that our clients don't have a lot of experience with, which is what shapes their false perception. And the way that I kind of bring it down to reality and smash that myth is by saying, just like your referrals are coming from an in-person network, the same thing can happen with a digital network or with a
Mm.
social network. And really typically that comes across when I explain how a social network works. And I mean, I'm sure that's something that this audience is really familiar with, right? But
Right.
I explain it as simply as this, right? You have one follower on your corporate LinkedIn page, one single follower
Okay.
who's a client. Joe Blow, your $5 million client, he followed you because
Nice.
he felt bad
What's up,
that you
Joe?
had no followers on your
Right.
on your page, right?
Not even your parents? Jeez.
Not even your parents.
Jeez.
This is the most dumbed down example I can
Thanks,
give,
Joe.
right?
Yeah.
So you push out a post, excited to launch, Poland Springs Advisory, whatever you want to call it.
Sure.
That one client, likes and comments, hey Justin, excited for you to launch your new firm, right?
Yeah.
What happens there, as a marketing audience knows, right, is that post goes from having a reach of one, being the one
Yeah.
follower, to then being placed in front of the network of Joe Blow, right? So then in Joe Blow's LinkedIn connections feed, Joe Blow commented on Poland Springs Advisory, great job, Justin. What did you just do? You literally, without even knowing it, he just referred your brand to his network. It's not like that
Right.
post was going in front of all the billion users on LinkedIn or whatever. It was only going in front of the people that matter, just like an in-person referral was.
Right. And that was just with one follower. I was having a conversation this morning about, what happens when you have 8 followers. But if even one follower sends to your whole audience, then you're actually followed by hundreds of people potentially, or thousands.
Yeah, yeah, sure. And obviously that's how things go viral. That's how social
Yeah.
algorithms work, right? Engagements drive reach. But
Right.
to an audience that isn't familiar with social or digital marketing, dumbing it down to that one follower example really, that's kind of how I take the hammer and smash it. It's really obvious to people. Wow, it's that simple, and it really is.
Yeah, and then you take the math out once you've simplified it and say, okay, now you're followed by 1,000 people, just like Joe.
Sure,
What
sure,
does that mean? That's like awesome. That's what you do then, and then you've been able to show results.
absolutely,
That's really cool. That's really cool.
absolutely.
LinkedIn to a landing page, captured in Pardot, nurtured, passed off to sales. Just that
That's
the way it was designed.
Yep, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. And I mean, I guess that first example I gave you, like I said, I'll kind of give you, sort of, I'll smash it on the organic side, and then I'll smash it on the inorganic side. On the inorganic side, I mean, really the way we smash it is by, I call it specific message to specific audience, right? Digital marketing, paid social specifically, gives you the ability to be more targeted than really any other channel, right? So
Right.
I have essentially all the advisors, all of our clients, the reason that they're so successful is because they're specialists, right? They don't do everything for everybody. They do what they're good at, and they do it
Yeah.
for the people who need it, right? And my first conversation with any of our clients, what I'm curious about is like, what is your unfair advantage, right? What makes your advisory group different, special, unique? In other words, what's your niche, right?
Yeah.
And that's really important for me to get out of them, right? Because that's the first step in them realizing that they have so much marketing potential. They don't think
Wow.
about it like that initially, right? They think about, oh yeah, I've been, serving franchisee owners for the past 20 years. But what they fail to realize is you can take that expertise of serving franchisee owners that you've accumulated over the next 20 years, create value add content in a bunch of different ways, and then put it in front of an audience that looks almost identical to the one that you're spending your 50 or 40 hours or whatever it is a week with, right?
Right.
And show them that you're an expert, right? Whether it's in a white paper or a video or a press release or a blog post or whatever it may be, right? If you can take that specific message, right? We're experts in dealing with this kind of wealth. I mean, I could give you an example, right? I mean, we
Yeah.
have, I'll stick with the franchisee owner thing, right? There's, what I learned from my clients, right, is like, what's the pain point? What's the hook? And then it's my
Sure.
job as the marketer, right, to craft that.
Right.
So what I hear a lot is, well, as a franchisee owner, we're a little bit scared about what corporate tells us to do, and we have to make sure that we're prepared for what corporate, or what some call big brother
Yeah.
is going to ask us for, right? And a good example is with what's called mobile payments terminals. If you've been to a McDonald's or a Burger King or any
Yep.
really fast food restaurant, notice, especially here in New York City, there's not even people at the counter in some cases anymore. It's order on the terminal, pick up your food. What you
Right.
don't realize as a consumer is that Big Brother is calling up that franchisee owner and saying, you've got to drop 20K for each one of those terminals, and it has to be in the next 6 months or whatever it is, right?
Wow.
So that could be kind of an unexpected hit to the business owner. And what we convey in our white papers, we try and really, really make this emotional. Is we you shouldn't have to sacrifice your family's vacation to Hawaii because
Mm.
Big Brother called you up and said you need to drop 60 or 100K on mobile payments terminals. But what's
Right.
that really saying is, we know your business as this financial advisor, and we're going to make sure that you have enough free cash flow to ensure that you'll never have to cancel your family's vacation to put in a
Wow.
terminal. So what's that paper really about? It's about free cash flow management solution. But that's not what the reader thinks it's about. The reader thinks
Yeah.
it's about their family's vacation to Hawaii.
Wow. As you're describing that, I mean, I just got back from a family vacay. It was a cruise out of Tampa, the
Oh,
islands
cool.
and whatnot. And as you're describing that, I'm just like, oh man, I could see that. Okay. Someone from on high says you have to do X, and that means, sorry, you got to cancel those plans this weekend or whatnot. Or that trip you've been saving up for.
Sure.
That's so emotional. And that story, you're right. It wasn't just, oh, hey, check us out. We've got this cash flow management, blah, 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 and it's like, oh,
Exactly.
it was like a real personal moment in the story. Wow.
Exactly. And then what's so cool to me, right, about digital marketing is that specific story that only applies to a tiny, tiny, tiny sliver of the population, right? Like
Right.
traditional media, traditional marketing, it would be so wasteful. 99% of your showings would be people who don't, care. But with targeted social, we can say we only want, owners of a specific business,
Wow.
in a specific region, and we
Right.
can be pretty certain that the people who we're targeting are having these issues, and that the content that we're putting together is going to speak to them. And that's why in a lot of cases, it's not a secretary or it's not an associate who's filling out, a form, because the secretary or the associate, we're not actually really doing our job properly if those are the people who are seeing the content.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I get that, because in the past I think, oh well, maybe they're doing research, but to your point, you're not going after those tactical requirements. You're talking to that person themselves about that vacation they want to take. Yeah,
Exactly. Just like I'd have a conversation in person with that person, right? I don't have the same conversation with every single person I sit down with. I'm sure, who does, right?
right,
Nobody does. We're
sure,
not robots. But
right.
so many marketers, make the mistake of having these blanket conversations where they have a singular message that goes to everybody. And to me, it's completely unhuman.
No, I love that. And would you say that's like your overarching strategy, the idea of that specific message to specific audiences? Is that
Yeah, for sure, for sure. I mean,
overall
I
approach?
think I would say in general, but right, and this is an important but,
Okay.
has to all map back to your brand DNA, right? We can't have inconsistent messaging all over the place, right? Like, I'm not suggesting that I put on a different personality as Justin Barish when I'm having an in-person conversation with different people. It's always Justin. It's always
Right.
me.
Right.
The subject matter, right? And maybe even like the energy level or whatever it is brought to the conversation may vary depending on what works for the person, but it's always me. It's always
Right.
genuine, right? Even though
Right.
the interactions are unique. And the same thing has to apply for targeted marketing. You have to be genuine. Everything has to map back to your brand DNA. That you have to use that as your lens and filter, right? Your truth, vision, mission,
Mm.
marketing 101 type stuff. If you're going around crafting these ultra specific messages, but you're not being genuine and you're not being true to your brand or your company's brand, then you're probably actually going to end up doing more harm than good.
Yeah. Now you get into the negative side of things. No, I love that. Authentic, right? Be authentic, and you want to help these people, and the whole point is to help them, not just to get their eyeballs on the
Sure.
ad or clicking on your link. It's like, we're here to help you so that you can do that vacation or whatever that pain point, that hook you were talking about is.
Yeah, sure. I mean, what's more frustrating, and we can be empathetic, put our consumer hats on here, than when you see, a post or an ad or whatever, whatever the content is that's gated, and you're like, oh, I'm really actually excited to put my information in and
Yeah.
download this. And then what you get is, a pile of crap. So what's worse than that for the business, right? The business's metrics are going to be all skewed. Like, look at our conversion rate. Look how
Yeah.
high they are. But what they're not measuring is the level of satisfaction of the person who's put in the information. And you'll see that in something like an unsubscribe rate, right? An
Yeah.
unsubscribe rate will skyrocket. And
Totally.
I call it misaligned value exchange.
Whoa.
So for marketing to work, I mean, for lead capture, prospecting to work, you have to have a value exchange, right? What
Yes.
you are giving must be of equal or greater value than what you are asking for. And when you deliver crappy content, that value exchange is off. You've misaligned your prospects' expectations. And again, you've done more harm than good. You shouldn't have even done this at all.
I love that misaligned value exchange. And one example I have of that was this ad I saw for marketing plus AI, and it's like, we'll help decipher the truth here. And I'm like, good, because people use AI all the time, too much.
Right.
They don't know what they're talking about. So I'm like, click, fill out the form. I get this thing, and it was garbage. It was the worst. It was pretty, but it was nothing to it. It was like 4 pages of junk. And I was so mad because I was like, you got me. Not only was it not helpful, but I felt tricked,
Right.
and then for sure, not only did I unsubscribe, but when someone called me, I told them exactly what they could do with that call,
Right.
that white paper that they could take back. It was just
Exactly.
that value. To your point, that was a completely misaligned value exchange.
Exactly. And now you have distaste potentially for that brand because of
Yeah.
it. And a better way to even put it is lack of trust. You've
Right.
ruined ability to trust them is so much harder now, especially when in so many cases, like downloading that white paper is like your first impression of the brand.
100%. Yeah, first impression. And I think sometimes people forget that this stuff isn't just a carrot to get people to complete a form. It actually needs to deliver on the promise that you offered at the beginning,
Totally. Totally.
You're
And
right. The conversion rates would look awesome. Oh, this white paper is kicking butt, but no one wants to take our call, and everyone keeps unsubscribing. I wonder what's going on.
yeah, exactly. And that's why, in a lot of ways, we'll give away like ungated content, right?
Yeah.
Before we hit an
Yeah.
audience with the gated content, because we want to like build up credibility, we want to build up trust before we ask for something, right? Like, we've found
Right.
that our conversion rates are people seeing the quality, people actually understanding and trusting the value exchange go way up when when they have a little sneak peek or they have a little taste before
Mm.
we're asking them for something. It does again, you're asking for somebody for something so frequently, so out of the gate, you lose sort of that feeling of honesty. And in a lot of times building up some credibility, building up some awareness and some interest with the brand before going straight for the kill, straight for the engagement, like, is really, really helpful.
I could see that. And, sometimes I could see being afraid of doing that because you want to capture that person. But it also says something else. It says my content speaks for itself. I'm going to give you this stuff and you're going to want more because it's helpful,
Yeah. Yeah. We've had one of our most successful one of our most successful campaigns ever. The content was not gated. It was such specific value add content to the audience and the form was like, if you thought this was helpful, leave us your information and we'll deliver you more of it. It was
and they did
so flat. Yeah. And they did. And then went into Pardon. We started nurturing those people, have a little Calendly link at the bottom of those emails. People start scheduling meetings. And really all the advisor has to do is look at his calendar and close the deal as it comes in. Yeah. I think that campaign ended up netting, $50 million in new business, $50 million of new assets for something that wasn't even required to fill out the form.
And the gate came after.
Yeah, the gate came after. Super interesting.
It's a ballsy move just doing that, but it shows that your content was that specific message to a specific audience. But I love that it was after the fact and you got more conversions probably than you would have at the beginning. And then you had that Calendly link on that email so they could just take that process right on through.
Yeah, exactly. And then, and then once that process does go through, once they do fill out that form, you can use things like progressive profiling, right? To pick up more information about that person.
Yes.
And they're going to be more likely to fill out, who's going to fill out what is your net worth on a field, right? And that's a field we get completions on sometimes. That's a hard ask, right? You ever put what's your net worth, right?
Yeah.
Probably not. But once you've already consumed value add content, started to build a relationship via marketing automation, and then you hit them with that question once some trust is built up, we see people fill it out all the time.
Wow. Interesting. That question also, what's your salary, annual salary, what's your company's revenue? It's just,
right.
It's like, if you ask it too soon, it's just like, you're asking, you just met someone. You're like, let's get married,
Right.
Like, I don't know you.
Yeah, it's a bad look. It's totally a bad look.
Hey, you're looking good tonight. What's your blood type? Like, who are you? Like, get out of here.
Totally.
Yeah. I get the sense that you're really thinking about process too, because we always talk about like you got to do strategy, then process, then technology, and your strategy, a specific message, specific people, the audience, and be authentic, makes sense. And then I heard that process coming in where you're talking about, you put the gate afterward, and then you had an email with a Calendly link, and it goes right to your person. When you think about what's the most important thing, or any advice, or how do you look at process overall?
Yeah, to me, it comes down to one word, which is routinization, or to make a routine. For me, process must be routine based. To me, it's far more about the inputs than it is about the outputs, because if you can be routinized in your inputs, if you can commit to being consistent and do things over and over and over again with the understanding that this is a test, everything is a test. You're learning from that test with the intention of refining after. You're going to end up getting to the output that you want eventually, right? Sometimes we get there real quickly. Sometimes it takes forever. But the output always has to follow the input. And if you can't be disciplined and focused on that routinization or on that process and testing the different variables in that process, you'll actually never get the output that you want, because you'll probably give up. You'll probably get too frustrated and give up too easily.
How do people mess that up? What's the opposite of the routinize? By the way, I love that word. I don't even know if it's real, but it is now.
It is. It is.
Is it
look it up in the dictionary. Yeah, to make a routine, routinized.
Cool. How do people mess that up?
Yeah, testing too many things too quickly, right? You do your first, targeted social ad, or you put your first email template, out there, and you see that, your engagement rates and click-through rates and open rates are garbage. And you're like, okay, so we're gonna change the subject line and the email template and the copy and the sender's domain and all this stuff. And then it can go better or worse either way. It goes worse. What drove it to go worse? It goes better. What drove it to go better? the fact that you were not routinized and did not follow your process of being scientific and testing based on variables and not testing based on everything,
Right.
you're never actually going to collect the information and insights that you need to factor into in order to optimize, for lack of a better term, right? So if you can't be routinized, if you can't be process driven, you actually never give yourself the opportunity to optimize because you never collect the information in order to make those strategic decisions or data driven decisions.
Right. So the process driven is helping you actually collect the right data. And because you're not changing up things all the time, your results are more normalized where you can compare A to B, not A to Z to F to
Sure.
4. And then you just, and I could see how you're constantly in that hamster wheel spinning because you can never make a decision.
Totally. And I mean, I'm not suggesting, right, that you don't change it up and that you don't test frequently. I like to use the word fail fast, right? Somebody asked me, like, what's the most important thing for like a new marketer to learn? And it's like, learn how to fail fast and learn how to love to fail, because that's the
Yes.
only way that you figure out how to succeed. So yeah, I mean, we're all about, rapid iteration. It's just like be systematic about it.
Oh, I love that. Rapid iteration, because you hear that all the time, but be systematic about it so you actually can move forward with the results, not just keep testing the same thing over and over again.
Right. Like, what is the KPI that really matters? Not what are the 20 metrics that we're able to collect, right?
Right. Yeah, KPIs for KPI's sake.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's super silly.
Going from strategy to process and then finally technology,
Sure.
marketing automation, how has that played into this
Oh,
whole
sure.
process?
Yeah. I mean, it solved a major problem for us, which is this, right? We got really good at, like, sort of delivering these targeted social ads. Like, we got really good at putting together, content for the ultra wealthy.
Right.
Um, so what that meant was we were capturing a ton of leads, right? A ton of leads for our clients. So we had a bunch of leads, and then once the leads actually like got that phone call or that in-person meeting or whatever, the advisors' conversion rates, because they're professionals and they're great at what they do. Or I love our clients. They make me look good.
Right.
Those, the conversion rates, once there was, I call it the butt in seat conversion rate. Once you
Okay.
actually have this person's butt in the seat, we're super high, right? Like, the advisors were
Right.
converting most of the business. The middle section was all screwed up, right? The amount of people going from form capture to button seat wasn't happening, right? So
Mm.
marketing automation like really helped us fill that void, because I mean, maybe we were a little bit egotistical in thinking that our content is so phenomenal that the person is ready to sit down and put their butt in that seat immediately. And that
Right.
was like so the wrong approach, because people are ready to people are triggered by different things, right? At different times, and are ready to have that conversation at different times. So we totally fail to acknowledge that, again, back to routinization, right? That having that consistent flow of information, those consistent touch points, that completely non-salesly attitude, just like, we're here, here's some bits and pieces of information. When you're ready to chat, we're welcome to. And at the same time, if you're not, just here's unsubscribe. I'll put the unsubscribe link huge. I don't like when marketers hide it. It doesn't matter.
Interesting.
Like, it's like the first line in the email: if this isn't for you, unsubscribe right now. We're confident enough, we're confident that we can help these people, that this is the most important email they're getting all day. And if it's not, please do unsubscribe, because you're not a good fit for us anyways, right? And so anyways, the point I'm making is that the marketing automation, right, the consistent ability, the ability to at scale, right, and without taking so much of the advisor's time. I mean, to backtrack just a little bit,
Yeah.
we started doing this manually, right? Like,
Oh, yeah.
I show the advisor, like, you're going to capture leads and you're going to send this email to them, right? So one, the advisors weren't focused enough to do that in a lot of ways. Two, their time is far more valuable than sending
True.
emails,
The same email over and over again. Yeah.
exactly. These are like, these are sophisticated people, right? That's not
Yeah.
really what they should be doing. And then three, they just hated it, right? It was miserable. So they
Yes.
didn't actually ever do it. And then four, it wasn't routinized. It wasn't consistent. So they would like, it was like flavor of the week, right? How am I feeling right now? This is how I'm going to write that email. It wasn't process driven. It wasn't routinized. It wasn't systematic, and it failed. So marketing automation, specifically using Pardot, was hugely helpful in sort of upping the amount of people who went from filling out a form to putting their butts in the seats. And it also taught us to be patient. And some of our biggest conversions don't happen immediately. They happen over time, and marketing automation and Pardot are what allows us to be scalable while we wait, right? It makes sitting in the waiting room while we're waiting for that for that prospect to convert like a much better experience.
Yeah, and you don't want your advisors to be doing all this sort of tactical level stuff, and I could see it wasn't routinized, right? And so some people would get in the seats, some people wouldn't, and you wouldn't necessarily know why. It's because those emails aren't being sent. It was kind of up to them, and so you took back some of that into the automation. I could see that, you kind of owning that whole process and using automation to help do that. I'm sure you made some good friends when you took back those emails from, I don't have to send that. I don't have to feel guilty because I don't send it anyways. That sounds great.
Sure.
Wow. So, tell me about social and LinkedIn, because I know you've really kind of cracked that, and even those challenging, whether people are going after high-end, investors or high-end net worth individuals, or just really challenging C-suite leads. What was your approach to social and LinkedIn in kind of the lead gen side?
Yeah, I mean, we try and be objective in our evaluation of different platforms, and we just are also try to be as honest with ourselves as possible about what different tools or what different platforms can do, right? So to me, it's really simple, right? How does Facebook, how does LinkedIn, how does Twitter, how does any social network get their data? How does it get their information? It's generated by the users, right? It's generated on people filling out their profiles. I mean, it's generated by them having location services turned on, right? And going places, right? These social networks aren't, this data doesn't come out of thin air. It's all generated by the users, right? So we had to think deeply about what type of user generated data, what sort of information would be valuable to us, right? And of course we tested it, right? I'm not saying that we figured it out. We'd run the exact same campaigns on different social networks and see what worked and what didn't work. But I mean, just so simple first of all, I think, any B2B marketer should, if you haven't looked into running sponsored ads on LinkedIn, it's a mistake. It's a big mistake. I understand they can be, we've had $50 CPCs on LinkedIn before, probably even more than that, right? Wow. I understand that it can be stupid expensive.
Yeah.
Stupid expensive, but
fail
at the
fast
same time,
so you don't spend too much money, right?
That's exactly right. You got to fail fast so you don't spend too much money. But the thing is, if you're a B2B marketer, your deals should be, or in many cases are big enough in size where you don't need to have a super high volume play. You just need to convert a couple. In our business, you typically only need to convert one to pay back a campaign. And there's no other social network that's truly allowing me to target a specific title of a specific employee at a specific company in a specific region, right? We've tried it, right? We've tried it on all the social networks, and LinkedIn has just by far been the highest quality in terms of audience. We've been able to craft the highest quality, most specific audiences on LinkedIn, essentially because it's the only network where users are completing their profile, their business profile to a T, right?
Got it. You're being accurate there. Yeah.
They're accurate. Exactly.
That makes a lot of sense. That's one of the places where people aren't BSing. I'm thinking MySpace back in the day, or something where you're like, yeah, I'm actually 5'10". I'll give myself a couple inches,
Totally.
Totally built, we're exaggerating on a dating site or something. And on LinkedIn, they're super accurate because it's kind of like the modern resume, For
sure. I mean, I do a little bit of work on LinkedIn. I'm a partner with our HR department, helping them source talent, right? And I mean, let's think about it from a company's perspective, right? When you're hiring talent, right? You hire, to hire via a recruiter, right? You could be paying 20% of that person's yearly compensation, right? So for $100,000 employee, you're paying that recruiter $20K, right?
It's harsh.
That's crazy. It's harsh. Whereas on LinkedIn, you could run a job posting for a couple $100, right? So what that means, it's kind of like the food chain here. The company, good corporations, great companies, are averse to working with recruiters in a lot of ways because they're so expensive, which means that they're turning to platforms like LinkedIn. So if you've
Right.
got, some of the most successful, most highly regarded companies hiring through these platforms, take a step down in the food chain, right? The audience that they're looking for, those qualified, those applicants, right? Qualified or not, those applicants, they're not even going to have a chance unless their profile is accurate, because that's literally the means to the end. They have to have that accurate profile in order to get an awesome job, right? And
Right.
because of that, we find that people's profiles are filled out so specifically and so accurately, which makes targeting them a heck of a lot of fun.
Yeah. I can see that being the case. And, I think when I've done some of that targeting in the past on LinkedIn, if I haven't been specific, I tend to see it starts big and then it kind of trails off and it can be kind of wonky. But if you're going specific message, specific audience, I can see that being beautiful.
Totally. And like, obviously, like in like any social network, right? You're paying for performance, you're paying for clicks, or you're paying for
Right.
impressions. So for us, like, we're not trying to build like massive audiences. Like, we love an 1,000-person audience. It's awesome. And what that
Yeah.
means is in that 1,000-person audience, there's only X amount of clicks that are going to happen. So even if the CPCs are really high, the total campaign cost can be managed pretty effectively.
That's a good way of thinking about it. I
Yeah.
totally get that. Okay. Only 500 people in this audience, but, $50, CPC. And then now you just know what your budget is. It's probably some percent less than that,
Yeah, exactly.
That's cool. That's
Exactly.
cool. Well, my question really is, who are you? How did you become, you're this VP marketing thought leader, really?
Thank you.
And I love what, did you just fail fast? How did you get to where you're at? Take us back to like baby Justin,
Yeah.
like, how did you become this awesome source of truth here?
Yeah, sure. So I don't know if I'm an awesome source of truth, but I'll take it. That's a very kind compliment. Thank you.
Well, I
I
said it
mean,
on a podcast, so that means it's true.
yep, there it is. You heard it
You
here. Real news.
heard
Real
it
news.
here.
So yeah, I mean, I come, I come from like a family of entrepreneurs. Both my father and my grandfather, and sort of back from there. So I've always been the type of person to, I was always taught in a lot of ways that if you get your foot in the door, it's kind of all you need, and then it's up to you to kick it open, right? All you need is to get that foot in the door. So I've always
Yeah.
sort of like had that perspective, right? I've always tried, my very best to be open-minded about different things. I never set out to be a marketer. I certainly never set out to be a financial services marketer. I mean, if you told baby Justin, or if you told, even college Justin, right, that you're going to be a financial services marketer, I would have,
Run for the hills.
yeah, right. Literally, I would have ran from the hills. I would have been like, "You are crazy." So I think that
What did you do in school? What did you go for?
yeah. So I mean, I went to school. I went to school for entrepreneurship. Actually, I went
Oh,
to
cool.
Northeastern University in
Yeah.
Boston, and my program was an entrepreneurship program. And entrepreneurship to me really just means, opportunity or problem solving, or value creation, right? So
Right.
what was really cool about my school, about Northeastern, was that I was part of a program called the co-op program, which essentially meant that in your time in school, you would do 3 full-time 6-month internships, right?
Oh, wow.
Where you would not be in school, you would be getting paid for these jobs, and you'd be working, 40 to 50, however many hours a week, full-time, at one of these, at a company, right? And I think each one of my experiences, each one of those co-op experiences actually really shaped me and brought me to the point, where I am now. My first one, I was working for a company called Level Up, which actually was acquired by Grubhub
Oh,
about
wow. Okay.
3 months ago for a huge valuation. They were a Google venture company. So I'd never like worked in an office or anything before. I saw, when I was going through the portal, I'm like, ooh, a Google startup. There's Nerf guns. And I mean,
Yeah.
quick story. My first day there, we were actually my first week there was the last week in our office, and we actually had a paintball tournament in the office. So like people are hiding behind the desks and shooting paintball guns, and like would just destroy the office because the building was getting torn down the next day, right? So like
Oh, okay.
I saw.
I was like, how does it even work? It sounds awesome.
It was so awesome, right? And like, so I saw that I would be, that was like the hook for me, right? I'm like, wow, like I'm 18 or 19, like I get to play paintball in the office and like have a Nerf gun, and like get free lunch. I mean, that sounds awesome. And man, it was funny. I'll never. It was my first interview, really my first interview like ever. And I walked into that interview, and the two guys interviewing look at each other, and they're like, something smells really strange. This is before I've even sat down in the interview chair, right? They're like, something in here smells really strange, and I know it's not Evan or I. Justin, what is that? I hadn't even sat down yet, right? And that was the first interview question. I was able to sort of navigate my way around that and make a joke out of it. And
was it a twist?
So basically what they were doing is they were testing to see how you reacted on your toes, right? It hadn't like they were trying, it was a type of job where they're like, we need people who think fast, right?
Yeah.
Take a super uncomfortable situation and flip it on its head, right? And
wow.
I took it from there, and then we ended up talking about barbecue. Quick side note, I'm a certified barbecue judge. So we started talking about barbecue.
How do you get certified for that?
Yeah, so there's like an association, and you have to take a course and pass the test. So
sounds like a good time.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's awesome. I'm actually only certified in the Pacific Northwest, which is like which is like a regional barbecue association, and the winners of those contests go like down to Texas for like the big contests.
Wow.
But anyways, right? Like I ended up getting that job just because I was able to think on my feet, and like, they were just looking for people who could, who were curious, right? And I think
right.
Sort of the fact that I was a barbecue judge illustrated my curiosity. And really, what I signed up for was a cold calling job. At the end of the day, where we would call businesses and try and get them to sign up for Level Up, which was a mobile payments platform. So while I was cold calling, right, and I was one of like I think the first 50 employees of this company. And so we were testing a lot, right? We were testing a lot of different things. And me being on the phone, like I was kind of like the first. I could like kind of gauge the feeling on the ground, right? So I would see, like, hey, like I would call on like 3 cities. I'd call on Atlanta, Chicago, and New York City, right? So like we had spent a lot of money on marketing in Atlanta, right? And I saw how that made my calls easier, whereas in New York we didn't have the budget, so my calls were harder. And there's other variables, but I started to understand how marketing could be a beachhead for sales, right? And I started to understand the relationship between marketing and sales, and that was completely unintentional. It just happened because I'm like, let's market more because I get paid more because I'm closing deals and getting
more deals. Yeah.
Right. So I learned, so much, so much in that job cold calling about marketing, because I learned how it makes the sales job. I learned how they're one team. To me, it's one team, marketing and sales, because common goal, the way we achieve that goal is slightly different, right? But we're literally partners. Like I always use that word, literally partners. And I learned about partnership there, right?
Right.
My second internship, I'm like, okay, I know for sure now I want to be.
That was the first one?
Yeah, that was the first one.
And
exactly.
Smells for the interview and
crazy.
I mean, that's the way to learn though, right? I mean, totally. That's smart of them to do that. So, okay, what happened second? What was your second one?
Yeah. So, I mean, basically the second one was that, at that point I knew like, okay, I definitely want to be on the other side of the partnership. I want to be on the marketing side. Right. So I ended up doing 6 months here in New York City at an agency that was actually acquired by Sprinkler soon after I left there. And it was cool because we were doing this was like kind of the early days of influencer marketing. And what we were doing was building custom social networks for like companies like Vogue magazine, where we'd invite like the biggest like we had a proprietary like algorithms that would basically identify who are the most influential like Vogue followers or fans. We'd invite them into a custom social network and then funnel them like either exclusive opportunities like, free tickets to, or, front row passes to the, Alexander Wang Fashion Week show, like something really exclusive like that, or, cool content opportunities like design your Fashion Week collage. And it was cool because, we'd have 1,000 people in those communities, and those 1,000 posts, those 1,000 people would post their collage and it would end up getting, like 1 billion impressions.
Wow.
Which was, right. And like, I didn't even know that this was a thing at that time. So that was like a huge learning experience. I'm like, well, marketing is so much deeper than I even thought it was. Like, there's so much strategy here where we're like, we're not going to pay anybody. The people who we don't pay are actually bigger advocates than paying a Kim Kardashian. Right. I never thought about it like that way before. And that's where like a lot of my commentary about like, genuineness comes from, because when you're paying like an influencer, that's not genuine. It's totally forced. Whereas when you're not paying them and you're giving them this really, really interesting opportunity, they're already huge fans. They already want to do this. Think about your favorite brand. If they called you up and they were like, hey, Casey, we want you to be our advocate, and we're going to give you, you name it, right? Gear. Like, I love snowboarding, right? If Burton called me up and they're like, we're going to give you a snowboard, right?
Like,
And I
hell
already
yeah.
love Burton, and I'm
Like,
like,
I would have done it
hell
for a
yeah.
sticker.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Yeah.
So we learned a lot about that there. And then just quickly, my third one, I had the opportunity to work at VMware, self virtualization out in Palo Alto. And that's
Wow.
where I learned about technical marketing, right? Like
Right.
we're selling and marketing highly technical products. And I found a love for the technical form of marketing, like in terms of technical language, explaining super complicated things to people who have absolutely no idea about the technical nature of it.
Right.
And that's how I ended up finding myself in wealth management, because I saw a lot of parallels between the technical nature of marketing servers or server virtualization software and figuring out how to market to a $10 million person that potentially the financial advisor they've been working with for the past 20 years maybe doesn't have their best interest in mind, and it could be worth looking around a little bit. That's a pretty technical sell, even though I don't think a lot of my peers see it that way.
I totally get it. There's and some people want that technology, because I even think of some of I know some super millionaire type folks, and some of them absolutely know certain speaks, and it's one of their hobbies is kind of learning
Sure.
stuff, and so they would be almost like that IT buyer, right? But then you have that business user buyer. Some of those other friends are like, I don't know, I hired the best and they manage that for me.
Right.
And it's that kind of sale. To your point, that story about the vacation was nothing to do with the technical, the ones and zeros of the system to balance your cash flow and all this. It had nothing to do with that. And you were going after that other user.
Yep.
Great parallel. That's probably
Yeah.
the first time I've ever heard that parallel with
Yeah.
investments and technology.
Yeah. That's how I see it.
Boom, mic drop. Mike, you dropped it right now. That's crazy.
Drop my headphones.
Yeah, just drop the headphones, walk off. I'm done here. My time is done.
Not as dramatic when it's a tiny little earbud.
Not as dramatic. Earbud on the table. man, when you mentioned that, the authentic influencer is really interesting, and getting the people that would do it anyway. It's like how we got connected was, working together with Pardot.
Sure.
I'm a huge fan of Pardot. All I was doing for years as a Pardot user was just saying how much I loved it. And not even for money, just
right.
I still love it, and I can still talk about it. And that's really how a whole business came about, doing that. So yeah, it's those people you want talking. You don't need to go pay some person to do X, Y, and Z. Especially in the B2B world, there's some power to those, those users that are just happy.
Totally. And then especially when you get into more niche markets, right? They're just smaller audience sizes, which means there's, influencers carry a lot of reach, even if there's less of them. And again, I mean, the point that you made, I think, is a good one, right? You want to find the ones who are just doing it because they love it, and because those are the people who are, again, back to the thematic, the theme of genuineness. Those are the ones who are going to communicate the message in a genuine nature, which at least for our brand is the right way to do it.
Absolutely. So there's another question I want to ask you, and it's really, if you look at your LinkedIn, and we'll link to you as well, but you really put in the time in sales, and then you put in the time in marketing, and eventually added tech, and now you're VP, right? So yeah, I was wondering, what kind of career advice, thinking of like marketers out there, their coordinators or whatnot, like almost like what would you tell yourself at the beginning of your career,
Yeah, sure. I mean, again, the beginning of my career wasn't too long ago. I'm only 27 now. Past those three internships I described have been solely here at Dynasty, and when I started at Dynasty 4 years ago, my title was I think it was marketing coordinator, and then it changed to specialist, associate, analyst, assistant vice president, vice president, something like that, right?
That's awesome.
I mean, I think the biggest tip, I have to think about this one a little bit, but I think the biggest tip that I would give is, and we talked about this a little bit when we had our prep call, is about small wins, going after the small wins rather than going after the big wins. That was super helpful for me. I mean, when I first came into Dynasty, I was hunting the sharks or I was hunting the elephants, right? I was going after those huge wins. Like, I'm going to build a custom social network that connects all our clients, and we're going to have groups around all the different services we
Right.
provide. And this is going to be like the stickiest thing ever, and what drives client retention. And like, that was like so egotistical for me to do. And I learned that essentially by making a fool out of myself a bunch of times in a row
What
by saying
happened?
what I just said, and then it never happened, right? I was never able to,
Uh,
I couldn't pull that off, right? It was way too ambitious of
got
a
it.
project with, like, huge budgets and so many stakeholders, having to be required and having to get
Different
the
dependencies, I'm sure. Other people. You're not
right.
even in control of it, really.
No, compliance had to sign off on it, and financial
Right.
services, everything has to be archived. So we had to build an archiving
Oh,
solution. It was just like, whoa, I just wasted so much time, effort, potentially money, embarrassed myself in doing all that,
right.
when I should have realized that 85% of our clients didn't even have company LinkedIn profiles. It's like, why wouldn't you start there? Here's what a LinkedIn profile is.
Wow.
Here's why your company should have it. Here's what editorial calendar is, right? Here's why you should be posting once a week. Here's how you determine what content's working and what's not. Oh, here's a platform, like, people were sending like email communications just on BCC and getting blacklisted. Like, here's a tool like a
Oh
simple
no.
tool like a MailChimp or a Constant Contact to start with, right? Like, and what I didn't realize is that there was so many small wins. There was so much small opportunity around me that I was neglecting because I had the tunnel vision of going after the elephant, going after the big kill, when in reality, by taking that step back, looking around and seeing that there was so many small wins around me, I'd get a small win and I'd get a couple of value points. I'd get a small win, I'd get a couple of value points, get a small win, get a couple of value points. And eventually those small amounts of value points ended up being worth far more than the custom social network. And
Right.
fast forward 4 years later, we actually are rolling out that product now, which is super cool. I'm super excited about that. It's one of my biggest initiatives of this year, right, of
Right.
2019. But it wasn't of 2013, even though I thought it was going to be.
Sure.
And certainly the only reason why I'm able to do it now is because I built up the credibility through those small wins over time, which has now allowed me to be in an appropriate position to have those conversations with the lawyers and with the archivers and with the compliance people and with our clients. And now it's possible, but it was only possible because I built up credibility prior to going for the big kill.
Right. That makes sense. I think as marketers, we often have those big ideas, and there's nothing wrong with that because obviously you're implementing one right now. But it's a great reminder to think about, just kind of, look at what's currently happening, and some of those small wins you might even take for granted. Like, of course you have a LinkedIn profile.
Right.
Really? What was it? 85% didn't have one, or
Totally.
something crazy
Yeah,
like
something
that?
like that. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
85% didn't have one.
Wow.
Yeah, and then I think the other tip I'd give, and this again, we're going to keep going back to this, this theme of genuineness, right? Is
Right.
that, so I'll tell this in a story. I really, really, really like to eat and to travel around,
Nice.
really to travel around the world and meet people who are doing really cool, interesting, different things with food. Whether it's somebody serving food off the street, right, in
Yeah.
Mexico City,
Yeah.
or whether it's going to one of the most high-end Michelin starred restaurants in the world. And this specific example, I was fortunate enough to be in Copenhagen, and I had the opportunity to eat at a restaurant there called Noma, which has been named best restaurant in the world a handful of times.
Wow.
And I was again fortunate enough to be able to, while I was dining there, strike up a conversation with one of the servers, and we started getting to talking. It was maybe a little bit after the meal. I was talking with the server, and I was like, "What makes it was the best service I've ever had in my life, best client service by far. I don't care if it's a restaurant, out of a restaurant. Like, these people at Noma know what they're doing." I'm like, "What?
Wow.
Like, how are you trained? Like, how do you do it, right?" And the tip that he gave to me was, he's like, "Listen, man, anybody with half a brain could like memorize the 20 ingredients in this dish and the fancy words that I'm using to do that. That's commoditized. Almost anybody can do that, but
Right.
only I can do it the way I do it, right? Only I can do it in my way, right? I know what I have to say, but only I can communicate it in my style and my flow. And
Right.
like, they're not on a script, right? Like they gotta communicate what's in the dish and what it is, but it's up to them. It's up to them to do it in a personalized way, right? And I'd say the same thing about myself, or like I think about it the same way myself. Like I'm certainly not the most skilled, technical marketer, the most skilled creative marketer,
Sure.
or like the most, whatever it is, right? In a lot of ways, those things are commoditized, or at least partially commoditized. But
True.
me being Justin Barish isn't commoditized. There's only one, right? So if you
Right.
can figure out what is, what is your personal spin, or what's your personal perspective, and like attach that in a genuine way to what you're doing, then there's nobody. You're irreplaceable. And if you can have that mentality, which is really, really hard to do early in your career because you're around all these people who make more money than you and are older than you and all this type of stuff. But if you can just be yourself and do the task that anybody can do in your own way, you're going to build relationships. And to me, a relationship should come before a task always. So that's a big tip I'd give: a relationship before a task.
Okay, relationship before task. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I really like the idea that only you can do it your way. Like, what an
Right.
interesting thing for a waiter to say. I don't. It's so astute. It's so interesting, and it's true. Whether you're a marketer or whoever, and thinking about you is like if you're a dish at a restaurant, the ingredients of how you got there. I mean, you did cold calling as an intern,
Right.
played paintball, you did all these things. And those experiences will never be duplicated. And so you as a marketer are 100% unique by the different things you've experienced. So
Certainly.
do
Certainly.
that, exude that marketing that you have that's unique.
Certainly. It's yeah, I don't know. That's the way I like to think about
Everything.
business, relationship, personal life, whatever.
So top place then. You've been all over the world. Favorite place to go? Because I'm a big food fan and travel myself.
Yeah, so there's, oh man, I mean, I did
I know it's hard. I just ask you like, it's like asking Elon Musk how to build a rocket.
yeah, for sure. I would say
9,000 steps.
I would say Tokyo for sure is my favorite.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Yeah, I lived there for a couple months
Wow.
while I was studying. And I mean, New York City is amazing too, right? Because
Yeah, of course.
you can come to New York City and like it truly is a melting pot. Whether it's Cambodian food, or whether it's French food, or whether it's Icelandic food, or whether it's halal food. Doesn't
Right.
matter what it is, right? You kind of get the best of all worlds in New York, which is amazing. But the reason I answer Tokyo over New York is just because of their basically, there's a Japanese word which I'm forgetting now. I think it might be kaizen, or I could be completely butchering that, which is basically the like continuous dedication to perfection, right? And like they embody that in their cuisine. So whether it's a ramen restaurant in the subway that doesn't even have chairs, where you're standing up and eating in 5 minutes while the train comes, they are showing up to prepare that ramen better and better and better and better every day, which by the way relies on routinization and process.
Yes.
Big learning lesson there. Or whether you're the $1,000 person, Jiro, sushi restaurant eating the most expensive fish in the world, it's the same thing. It doesn't matter if it's high end or it's low end. It's continuous dedication to self-improvement, realizing you'll probably never achieve perfection, but striving to get there is like what you're showing up for. That's why I'd answer Japan, because of that reason.
Absolutely. The phrase, sometimes it gets cliche of practice makes perfect, but I've since heard that it corrected to practice makes progress,
Right. I love that.
You're always progressing, but to your point, there is not a perfection. There is continuous improvement. And you're right. It is Kaizen, Kaizen. Yeah, I love Tokyo too. I had a chance to go there, and what I was fascinated by was just different culture. Like thinking of compared to New York, when the crosswalk says "Don't walk," no one walks. And I
Right.
remember seeing an American being like, "Hey, there's no cars that I can see in my visible range anywhere, and there's 20 people standing there not walking, so I'm not walking either because I'm
Right.
not gonna So, but in New York, there could be traffic, and you're walking in between everything.
Totally. Man, I was even in Florida like yesterday, 2 days ago. And I was like walking across the street in St. Petersburg, Florida, and like I was getting looks like, "What are you doing? Your hand
Dude.
is red. I'm like, oh, not in New York. Sorry, I forgot.
In Europe's like that too. Like apparently, if
Yeah.
you look at the driver, then it's your fault if you get hit. But
Yeah.
if you don't look at them, then it's okay. It's their fault. They
So
hit you.
funny.
You didn't see them. Wow, that's a cool theme though. So all these travels and experiences, and seeing people in their Kaizen, seeing people progressing and getting better every day at the different things they're doing, and the routinize that we talked about. That's I see that theme throughout.
Yeah, it's cool. It's cool. And I guess, I wasn't even thinking of this one before, but it's another third tip to like, young
Yeah,
marketer or whomever it is, right? Is there's like cross applicability. And I'm like, I'm really just forming this like right now is like, there's, what do we call it? Transferable skills, right?
yeah,
So like you're saying, we're talking about service in a restaurant and that translating to wealth management, right? We're talking about,
right,
making ramen noodles and that's translating to, creating a killer engagement studio, right? In
right.
Pardot. Like all these different things, like there's something you can take away from everything if you're like a little bit thoughtful about it and apply it to almost anything else. And like if you can think about things maybe not so much in a silo, but more holistically, like this is how I can apply something that seems completely unrelated to something else and do better because of it. Like it's a really interesting skill to be able to have, and it's something I strive to cultivate.
Huh. Yeah, it's so true that that you can get information, you can get inspiration from the weirdest, smallest thing. I mean, that's why you're taking a shower in the morning and
Right.
eureka, flux capacitor.
Right. It's
Right?
totally true. It's totally
Yeah,
true.
and so get out there and experience things, and you never. And I think you have to be open to it. Like what I know you're forming this thought too, and I'm with you on it. In order to get the fact that a restaurant could be something you learned from, you had to be open to it. Was there anything else you had to kind of look for it, or just recognize that it takes a humility to just you could learn from a waiter, maybe you're a vice president, but you could learn from that waiter in that restaurant or the street
Yeah,
vendor.
totally. And I mean, I think that, there are some, really successful, famous people have, basically said, and, the way you treat the lowest person in the room is actually in a lot of ways, like the lowest person being the waiter, whomever it is, right? If
Yeah,
you're at a board meeting, in a lot of ways is sort of indicative, right? Of like, who you are as a person in a lot of ways. And I mean, I think that
100%.
if you can, I think you said it best, right? I mean, if you can sort of have that open-mindedness or just realize that it doesn't matter, like power is it's subjective, right? How you
Yeah,
assign power is based on like a belief system or a value system. And if you can, test or, maybe adjust that system to give a little bit more power to people who don't conventionally have it, you might realize just by doing that they have something more valuable to offer than maybe the person that you had originally assigned the power to.
right. 100%. I have had a chance. I recently got back into karate, and
Oh, cool.
as a kid, all whipped to college, eventually got a black belt, but then 20 years later, haven't done it in a while, but I got my son into it, and it's the same style that I had, and I was like, oh man, that was fun, maybe I'll get back into it. But how do you do that? You're expected to know everything, but no, what they do is they give you a white belt, and you just practice with that as long as you need to until you basically re-earn that rank. And I've had a blast walking around as a white belt. Normally, you'd be like, oh, what am I doing in this white belt? And
Right.
I'm the lowest ranking guy. It's actually easier to figure out where I stand at the beginning of class. I'm at the end. I don't have to worry about, am I in front of this guy, behind this person? No. I'm in the back. It's cool. And I'm learning, to your point, from everyone. And I get to be super humble and let the green belt tell me if they want to attack first or not. Hey, you show me and I'll learn from you. And it's what a cool exercise, just to
Yeah.
kind of put on our white belt and learn from everyone else around us, even if we've got to that master rank, to still kind of go back and see if there's something else we can learn.
No, I love that. I think, basically the story you just told is really it's really a microcosm for, and sort of my point about the cross applicability. I mean, that's a
Yeah.
microcosm for a lot of things in life, being able to, obviously when you earn something, you earn it, right? And you
Yeah.
deserve it. But at the same time, if you can just take that step back and kind of put yourself in the beginner's shoes. I mean, maybe part of it is empathy, right? That
Yeah.
maybe wearing that white belt is giving you sort of that empathetic understanding of green belts and the orange belts and the purple belts and the black belts, which is actually, completing your perspective and allowing you to be the best black belt possible.
Totally. And you know what's really fun too is I get to surprise the black belts. They're like taking it super easy on me, and I'm like, "Oh yeah, no problem." Blah blah blah. And they're like, "Whoa, is this your first?" I'm like, "It's my first class. I've never done this before."
Yeah,
like,
you could.
wow.
What's that movie? It's what is it? White Men Can't Jump, where they hustle on the basketball court. You're can't kick or do karate or whatever. Definitely win some bets is what I'm saying.
Right.
Folks.
Hey, want to do a competition here? I start hustling. Karate Hustler. Next on HBO.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
So
man.
funny.
Well, this has been really cool. I don't know if you looked at the time. It was like a time warp. We just dove in and
12:13. Damn.
Yeah.
There we go. Cool.
Crushing it out, man. Well, what are some of the ways people can connect with you, and obviously, learn more about what you do? Maybe get an example and go check out what you're up to. What are some of the good links? Where can people find you?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I've mentioned LinkedIn a lot, so I'm a big LinkedIn guy. Just search Justin Barish or Justin Barish Dynasty Financial Partners. Feel free to connect. Maybe leave me a little personal, to our point about personalization, a little bit of a personalized note saying, you're a fan of the show and you heard me on the show. Would be happy to, connect and share any more specifics or more about what I do. But definitely you can find me through LinkedIn, via email, Justin Barish, JustinBarish @dynastyfp.com. And definitely check out our website, dynastyfinancialpartners.com. You can find, pretty much list of all our clients on there, which my day job is to help them, continue to grow and do awesome things. So you can get a taste of what we're sort of doing for the different brands that we serve. And I would say those are the best channels, but definitely connect on LinkedIn and give our Dynasty Financial Partners corporate page a follow.
Yeah, absolutely. Give that a follow based on the stories we heard today. Add that network, be Joe and follow that. This has been really cool. This is awesome. I've filled a page. So everyone out there, if you've learned something, and I know you have because I have, I've got a page front and back full of notes. But
I was wondering what you were doing down there.
Oh, yeah. Playing tic-tac-toe. Like, this guy's boring. Playing, tic-tac-toe with myself over here. No, I'm writing notes. I'm learning from you. This has been awesome. Both on the career side. I mean, this is going to be really helpful for a lot of people. And then also the idea of that specific message, specific audience, be authentic in that delivery. You need, to your DNA. Love this, man. This has been really cool. So for people listening, get this message, share with coworkers, friends, put it out on social, tag Justin in that. And if you do add him on LinkedIn, don't be creepy and just do a little ad, write a little note, say hi, and you'll thank yourself, because when you do that, LinkedIn remembers. So later on, 2 years from now, when you're working together on a deal, you're like, how did I meet you? Like, I have no idea. LinkedIn will tell you, oh, here's how. So be sure to write that little note in there when you send that message. But thanks again, man. This has been super cool.
No, thank you for having me on. It was, a pleasure to share some of my experiences and insights. And next time you'll have to have me back for the late night edition where I can trade my coffee for that beer.
100% late night edition. We'll have disclaimers at the beginning and everything. Shots in New York City.
Cool. All right. Thanks a lot.
Awesome, man. Thanks again.
All right. We'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Yeah.